and welcome to this week's Wellness Webcast. I am Mo Wolf, CEO of Little Honeyzzz LLC, head beekeeper, and all-around nice guy. Wow, Julius hasn't said a word. This is pretty good. We're 30 seconds into the broadcast and no comments from the peanut gallery. Mr. Sadler, how are you? Mr. Sadler says he's doing well. He's fine. It is a beautiful day here in southern Wisconsin. It may never rain in Southern California, but I tell you what, it occasionally rains here. What a beautiful morning this was. The sun was shining, some fair weather clouds. It was just beautiful. Crisp, cool air. What more could a guy ask for with a cup of coffee, you know? I warned you last week that we were going to be getting pretty down and serious today, and that we were going to be talking about the honeybee, and that is what we are going to do. Well, of course I have the graphic. Have you all seen the Time magazine cover from this month or this week, however they do that? This is the Time magazine cover for the latest periodical period that they've got. How about that for eloquence? Time magazine, a world without bees. The price we'll pay if we don't figure out what's killing the honeybee. Well, that's pretty frightening. I mean, did you see that? Let's put that back up. Julius, let's put that... Thank you, Julius. A world without bees, and they've got the beautiful little bee. She looks like she's got a bit of the Cordovan strain in her, maybe a Carnolian hybrid with some Cordovan in her, and it's on this black background. It's bleak. It's scary. Well, there are some things going on with the bee, and the amazing thing is, we've been talking about this at Little Honeyzzz here. I talk about this to a lot of you folks out there when I go around and I do my little demos where I take my observation hive and I show up at Whole Foods or Hy-Vee or wherever. But for the last 5 or 6 years, people have been coming up to me on a regular basis. What's going on with the honeybee? They're dying off. It's all over the news. It's apocalypse. And I've been telling them what my opinion is. I've been talking to the appropriate people in research, telling them what my findings were, and it's been falling on deaf ears at this point. But I want to read something to you. We put that Julius, put that cover up again for me, would you? Thank you, Julius. A world without bees. These are some pretty heavy. That's a pretty heavy cover. It's beautiful, but that's pretty heavy. What they're saying. The bee is dying out, and then you've got Mr. Brandon Keim from May of 2013 in Wired.com, in Wired Science section, writing an article that the headline is, 1/3 of the U.S. honeybee colonies died last winter, threatening the food supply. Nearly 1 in 3 commercial honeybee colonies in the United States died or disappeared last winter, an unsustainable decline that threatens the nation's food supply. Multiple factors, parasites, fungicides, viruses, malnutritions, all believed to cause the loss. which were officially announced today by a consortium of academic researchers, beekeepers, and Department of Agriculture scientists. We're getting closer and closer to the point where we don't have enough bees in this country to meet pollination demand, says entomologist Dennis van Engelstorp. That's just the perfect name for an entomologist. Mr., or maybe he's a doctor, that'd be even cooler, Dr. Van Engelstorp, I study bugs, of the University of Maryland, who led the survey documenting the decline. It'd be cooler if Mr. Van Engelstorp were to study termites. That would be really cool. Well, no, I'm not saying anything negative about his name. I think the name's cool. I think it goes very well with entomology. I mean, the name Wolf doesn't go well with entomology. It goes well with, you know, a rabies shot. Distemper shot. Hoof and mouth, perhaps. Oh, God. But, so you have Time magazine saying that the bees are maybe all dying off, and what's going to happen in a world without bees. You have Mr. Brandon Keim in Wired.com saying that 1/3 of the U.S. honeybees are dead. We're in real trouble. It's unsustainable. We can't keep this going. And then they're speculating on what might be causing it. Then you've got, and this is golden right here. Right here. This one, and keep in mind, I'm not digging into Google or anything else to try to find these headlines. These are you just Google honeybees, crisis, news, boom, you get these crazy. In the EU Times, not too long ago, I think it was published back in May again of this year. The EU Times writes with this headline. This headline is awesome. May 10th, 2013, EU Times, Russia warns Obama. Global war over bee apocalypse coming soon. Then you get into it. The shocking minutes relating to President Vladimir Putin's meeting this last week, and now Russia has just turned off. Man, I should keep my mouth shut. How are we going to keep viewers if I keep insulting leaders around the world? The shocking minutes relating to President Vladimir Putin's, I resisted the urge, meeting this last week with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry reveal the Russian leader's extreme outrage, ooh, that's in quotes, over the Obama regime's continued protection of global seed and biogenetics giants Syngenta and Monsanto in the face of growing, quote, bee apocalypse, end quote, that the Kremlin warns, quote, will most certainly, end quote, lead to world war. And then they go into talking about the neonicotinoid pesticides, talking about how the European Union has banned them, and going into some of how dangerous they are. It's actually a pretty interesting article. I just find it amazing that you have leaders of global superpowers rattling sabers over the honeybee. Now, why is that? Why? Mr. Sadler, do you know why Vladimir Putin would be getting so upset? I'm doing this like a El Duce. Would you tell me why Vladimir Putin is getting so upset over a little tiny bug? Does anyone know? Well, here's the answer. Because 1 out of every 3 bites of food that goes into your mouth and my mouth is directly related to the honeybee having pollinated the flower that was the start of that piece of food. So if there's a problem with the honeybee and the honeybee goes away, then 1/3 of the food supply is immediately in trouble. 1/3 of the food supply immediately in crisis. Now that doesn't take into consideration the indirect relationships with the honeybee. That's just the direct relationships, things like watermelon and almonds and cherries and blueberries and oh my. That's just the direct relationships. Then you get into the indirect relationships and it becomes more perilous. So the reason everybody's getting all worked up and fiery over this is because that little honeybee, that little creature that's about that big, you've seen, I usually will oftentimes have an observation hive with me. I didn't today because we've been having so many problems with the lighting and such. But that little creature is so important. She's a gift. And yes, there has been an incredibly huge die-off, not just in the United States, but around the world. There have been problems with the honeybee. And over the last, 5-6 years, when I'm out at the stores and giving lectures on honeybees, folks will come up to me and they'll say, "Mo, what is going on with these creatures?" And I've told them what my opinion was. And I've told them that it's not as simple as some guy in Germany saying cell phones are killing them out. It's not as simple as a neonicotinoid-based pesticide. Yeah, those are nasty things. Neonicotinoid pesticides kill a lot of creatures. Very dangerous. And yes, they cause problems with the bee. However, that's not the problem alone, because we were using neonicotinoid-based pesticides in this country before colony collapse disorder became acute. They've been fooling with those things since the 1980s. The 1990s, they started to become pretty well widespread. Now they're everywhere. And we didn't start having colony collapse die-off until the mid-thousands. 2004, 2005, 2006 is when it really became acute and people started seeing it for what it was. But we've had a problem in this country with a lack of bees for quite some time. In fact, up until December of 2010, we were importing 747 jet plane loads of honeybees in from Australia on an annual basis to help meet the needs of the almond population. I hold in my right hand here an article from the Michigan Beekeepers Association dated December 21st, 2010. And they are quoting a federal directive. The following federal order was issued December 21st, 2010. To view the actual document, yada yada, to state and territory agricultural regulatory. Dun dun. This federal order prohibits adult honeybees, Apis mellifera, for those of you who like Latin, from Australia into the United States. Importation and interstate movement of these bees to Hawaii and the U.S. territories is prohibited. And it's because the few previous years they started finding some viruses in the bees that were unique to that Australian strain. And so, because we were already having a crisis with honeybees in our country, we didn't want the virus coming in from the Australian bees and polluting our honeybee population and killing them off. We're already doing a fine job of that. Well, again, you say, Morgan, would you just tell us what's going on? Okay, I'll tell you what's going on. For years, I've told you this. This is my see, I told you so moment. Ha! Put that in your pipe, Mr. Sadler. Chalk it up, Julius. This is the day. This is a red letter day. For years, I have been telling you people, the problem with the honeybee is very complex. It's a perfect storm of events, and these are the words that I have been using for years. It is a perfect storm of events. It's a perfect storm of disease, pathogenic disease, parasitic disease. It's a perfect storm of events of environmental factors, drought, monocrop, turning the normal forage for the honeybee into, well, as the Time magazine said, a food desert. When all you have out there is corn, soybean, and wheat, there's nothing for the bee. And so there's less and less forage for them. And this is a problem we've been running into in southern Wisconsin, where every time you turn around, a new alfalfa field is being plowed under and turned into corn. So that way we can, burn it in our engines and ruin our engines. Yes, now I've got the corn growers mad at me. Oh, whatever more. Julius, you can't keep them all happy. So you've got this problem of these pathogens, the disease pathogens, the parasites. You've got the environmental issues of drought. You've got the environmental issues that we've created with the monocropping. We've got all kinds of this stuff. And then you also have this problem of the bee culture. And that is the way that the bee culture has been raising the honeybee for generations now, of not bees, but the actual beekeepers. The apiculturist saying, "Oh, good, we're going to take all of the honey out of the hive and we're going to replace it with what? Corn syrup." Well, you and I both have talked about corn syrup in the past. We've talked about how the fact that corn syrup has very little, if any, nutritive value for that honeybee, and worse yet, combines in her stomach with some of the enzymes to become mildly toxic. Well, there's one mild toxin. Then you've got the GMO corn that has been treated with the neonicotinoids, which doesn't outright kill her, but again, it's a mild toxin to her, and she brings it back, and it's wearing her down, and it becomes. You ever hear about Napoleon? Napoleon Bonaparte. I don't know who dynamite is. Is that some sort of firework? Napoleon Dynamite blows up there, and you've got some guy in a funky pointed hat going for seconds, and then it just. Folks, I am not a culture vulture. You'll have to forgive me. I don't know who Mr. Sadler just referenced. Napoleon Bonaparte. He was poisoned. At the end of his years, one of the theories was he was poisoned slowly over time with small doses of arsenic. Had nothing to do with elderberry wine. Now you know I'm not a culture vulture. I just referenced arsenic and old lace. When you poison some organism slowly over time, it's very insidious, and you slowly start changing that organism. And this is some of the symptomology that we see in a colony collapse disorder. You see bees that are starting to show signs and symptoms of not really knowing where they are and not being able to communicate clearly with the other bees. But that's just one aspect of it. I've been telling you, folks, I've been telling you for years that it is a perfect storm of events. It's all of these things working together in concert with a weakened genetic pool. And now some of you that have talked to me face to face are saying, yes, the little intestinal parasite was right. Hey, Remember, I'm a little intestinal parasite with shoulders. How did the genetic weakening happen? Well, it happened like this. Over the course of the last 80 years, apiculture has been throwing antibiotics onto the bee colonies preventatively. And they've been doing this to combat American foul brood. That's how it started. They've been doing this to combat other bacterial pathogens within the hive. And lo and behold, those pathogens adjust and they get around the medications, but we're still throwing it on. And instead of breeding for healthier bees, what has happened was you get this industry that is just taking the easy way out and throwing some sort of medication on the hive. Well, then that takes this colony that is not strong enough to survive and cope with these pathogenic influences, and you're propping them up. And so then this weakened genetic then breeds with this colony over here who was strong enough to resist the pathogen, but now subsequent generations are that much weaker. And you amortize this out over 80 years, which is how many millions of generations in bees, and you end up with an animal, Kingdom Animalia. You end up with this creature who can no longer cope. She's so weak, her natural God-given ability to resist disease is no longer there. And so then you get good-hearted people like the folks at the University of Minnesota and Dr. Marla Spivak trying to reintroduce that genetic behavioral mechanism into the bee to where they can resist these diseases. Kudos to you folks. Thank you. Thank you. We started working 5 or 6 years ago, 10 years ago, somewhere in there, to combine that genetic of, they call it hygienic behavior, where the bees will sense the pathogen in the colony before it becomes contagious and remove those individuals that are carrying it and get them kicked out of the hive, and that way it doesn't affect the colony. We started blending that theory with the theory that you can breed for grooming capabilities with our bees. And at the time, I mentioned it to some of the smart folks, and they patted me on the head and said, "Nice little guy, just leave it to us, don't you worry. That hasn't been shown to be empirically possible." And some of you have heard this story. And so I made some phone calls to folks that I knew were working with Russian bees. And the Russian bees, by the way, are the ones with the big hats. They go around doing Russian squat kicks and never mind. The Italian bees tend to like Puccini. They do. Their opera is just stunning, and you sit back and you weep. Nobody can do a production of Madame Butterfly like the honeybee. The Cordovan honeybee. Oh. Where am I? Julius, save me! I got sidetracked. But some of you know that I've made these phone calls and contacted guys and gals that have been working with the Russian honeybee for some time. And I said, are you having problems with varroa mite? And they'd say, no, we don't really have a problem because, the Russian honeybee grooms itself. Okay, so I got my hands on some of these Russians and I started incorporating it into our breeding program that we had incorporated some of the Minnesotan hygienics, and we ended up with a bee that didn't have problems with disease, didn't have problems with parasites. Yeah, you could find the varroa mite in the hive, but it was within normal limits. And we didn't have problems. And then in 2007, 2008, 2009, when beekeepers in our area were having 60, 90% wipeout every winter, we might lose, 10 hives out of 500. That's pretty amazing. Well, what nobody is saying is this ain't the first time we've had a bee die-off, folks. Happened last in the 1970s and 60s and 70s. There was one back in the 1920s. There was one back in the 1880s. And you start doing your homework, your history homework, and you will find that going back through time, you have this cyclical die-off that kicks in. Is it the same as what we're experiencing now? Who knows? Who knows? We didn't have some of the empirical studies that back then as we do now. There's no way of knowing. But when you have an animal, a species that has a cyclical die-off, doesn't it make sense that maybe it's a natural mechanism built in to cull out the weak genetics? I mean, these cyclical die-offs, the earliest recorded instance of them is 1504, where you have a mysterious bee die-off. But each time, that honeybee, that beautiful little creature that we love so much, she's proved how resilient she is. Each time the weakened genetic has died out and you end up with a stronger genetic animal, and she's good for another 100 years, she's good for another 40 years, she's good for another 10 years. But then, 2006, October of 2006, some beekeepers in Florida started finding between 30 and 90% mortality rates in their hives. And it's been going since 2006 with these incredible die-off numbers. Some beekeepers getting 100% wiped out. Why is that? Well, 2013, May 2013, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the EPA, rest assured, friends, your government is on the case. They've been doing their studying, and they published their report. And well, let me just read this to you. Washington, Dateline, Washington, the U.S. Department, this is coming directly from the EPA report, okay? Directly off the EPA's website. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, today released a comprehensive scientific report on honeybee health. Fanfare, everybody. The report states that there are multiple factors playing a role in honeybee colony declines, including parasites, diseases, genetics, poor nutrition, and pesticide exposure. Key findings include parasites and disease present risks to honeybees. The parasitic risk was the varroa mite, and we've talked about him. We'll talk about him some more in some subsequent broadcasts. Key finding number 2, increased genetic diversity is needed. Haven't I been telling you people this? And I know we're at the half-hour mark, but this is an important topic. And we don't have to worry about sponsors. We don't have to worry about time deadlines. We're going to keep going here. Increased genetic diversity is needed. U.S. honeybee colonies need increased genetic diversity. Genetic variation improves bee thermoregulation, the ability to keep body temperature steady even if the surrounding environment is different, disease resistance, and worker productivity. In other words, you got inbreeding. You've got a bad case of Arkansas right there in the beehive. Now, both people in Arkansas that were computer literate just shut us off. So I've offended the Russians. I've offended Arkansas. Who else have I offended today? Boy, I'm on a roll. Sorry, Arkansas. Texans are hooping it up, though. So you've got parasites. You've got a genetic bottleneck. Haven't I been telling you this? Poor nutrition among honeybee colonies. Nutrition has a major impact on individual bee and colony longevity. That nutrition is called corn syrup. That nutrition is called monocropping. If you let the bees eat their own honey, you won't have this problem. Now, I get told I'm nuts on a regular basis, and not just by family members. But I get told I'm nuts because we're dumb enough to feed our bees their honey. Any given year, we can give back between 50 and 60,000 pounds of honey to our bees just in October, and then another 10 to 20,000 pounds in February, just to make sure they've got enough honey to get through the year, get through those lean months. But what does the rest of apiculture do? Take the honey and sell it, and replace it with corn syrup. Well, that's a nutritional nightmare. And then come springtime, what do you got? You've got seas and oceans of amber waves of corn and soybean and wheat. There's no food there for the bee. So you got poor nutrition among honeybee colonies. This is another key finding by the EPA and the USDA. There needs to be a need-improved collaboration and information sharing. That's kind of a mouthful, say. Best management practices associated with bees and pesticide use exist, but are not widely or systematically followed by members of the crop-producing industry. Beekeepers emphasize the need for accurately and time bee kill incident reporting, monitoring, and enforcement. Wait a minute. Guys, I got a problem with this. You folks in the government there. I'm trying not to get frustrated, folks. Trying to subdue that rising liver yang. It's not just the exogenous pesticides. Haven't I been telling you this? It's not merely only what's being sprayed on the fields. Yes, that's a huge problem. Yes, that's impacting the bee. But what about these things that get put into the bee colonies? Remember, you've got these little rubber strips that are impregnated with organophosphate-based pesticides. That's another class of pesticides. You've got the neonicotinoids. You've got the organophosphate-based. And then there's one other that I can't think of at the moment because I'm so frustrated. You've got these little rubber strips that get put into the hives to try to kill off the varroa mites. You've got all kinds of little chemicals that get put into, yes, I am nuts, Julius. You get all these chemicals that get put into the colonies to control the nosema, to control the American foul brood, to control all of these problems, when all we have to do is breed for resistance. Feed the bee what it needs to eat, its own honey. Bees were not designed to eat corn syrup. You never saw Winnie the Pooh feeding his bees corn syrup. You never did. Check it out. Beekeepers are responsible just as much as the farmers that are spraying the fields. Beekeepers are just as much responsible as Monsanto, Syngenta, whatever their name is. Beekeepers are just as much as responsible for this bee die-off as anybody else. Because beekeepers are being beekeepers. Woo! You are my bees. You will do my bidding. Yeah. No. If you've got bees, if you are a hobbyist beekeeper, you're going to understand what I'm about to say. If you've got a soul, you are going to understand what I'm about to say. The rest of you probably aren't watching this anyway. And if you are, and you don't understand what I'm about to say, you shouldn't be working with bees. Here's what I'm about to say. If you've got bees, if you were blessed enough to have honeybees in your life, to be responsible for a hive, 2 hives, maybe a couple thousand hives of honeybees, you are not their keeper. You're their steward. Do you see the difference? There's a difference between I am the keeper and I am their steward. A keeper makes them do what he wants. He takes that round peg and he shoves it through the square hole and he says, "You will do it." The steward says, "What can I do to reduce stress on these creatures? What can I do to make their lives a little bit easier, their survival a little bit less desperate? What can I do to take care of the animals that are in my care?" And yes, I'm referring to the honeybee as an animal. They're part of kingdom Animalia. Get over it. So what that they don't have a backbone? Neither do most 98% of the politicians that are out there. And yet we still refer to them as Homo sapiens. I'm sassy today. The USDA report, colony collapse disorder is a serious problem threatening health of honeybees and the economic stability of commercial beekeeping and pollination across the United States. Now here's the rub. Here's the rub. Remember, 1/3 of our food supply is directly related to the honeybee. If there's a problem with the honeybee, and no, I don't think she's going to die out. I don't think she's going to die out because you've got beekeepers that realize they're not keepers, they're stewards. There's some of us out there that are stewards. One lady, a patient of mine, actually refers to herself as a bee shepherd. There are people out there that are passionate about their honeybees and are starting to do things right. So no, we're not going to have the honeybee totally dead. She's not going to go extinct on us. However, you probably will see, unless we have some major changes in our culture as beekeepers, apiculturists, let's use that term. Unless there's a major change in the culture of apiculture, boy, that was redundant, you're going to have a lot of bees dead, a lot of colonies dead, a lot of beekeepers out of business, a lot of farmers out of business because there's nothing to pollinate their crops, which means they won't be growing anything, which means those guys that are growing food are going to be able to, hey, the market supports it, let's raise the price. Prices are going to go up. It's that simple supply and demand formula. That old scriptural reference to a day's wages just to buy a loaf of bread doesn't seem so far-fetched. So what can we do? What can you and I do to make a change? Let's throw out that study. Almost I've read the EPA study, the USDA study, and it's almost word for what I've been preaching for the last 5 to 10 years. What can you and I do? Well, I'll tell you. Here's what we do. Those of us that are raising honeybees, we do it right. We don't strip all of their honey off of them. Let them eat their honey. That's the way God designed them. We be careful where we set up the colonies. I have to drive sometimes a couple thousand miles a week just to visit all of my bees because it's getting so hard to find good, clean forage for them here in southern Wisconsin because of all of the monocropping. But we've made this commitment to do it right. It's the right thing to do. Makes it tough. It's exhausting. But it's the right thing to do, and the right thing to do is never easy. Otherwise, it wouldn't take guts to do the right thing. Those of you that don't raise honeybees, what can you do? You can support those of us that do. You can support those of us that do raise honeybees and are raising them the right way. Buy the rescue balm. Buy our lip balm. Because when you do, you're going to allow us to continue doing our little research project that we've been conducting for the last decade or so. It allows us to stay in business, to continue being stewards for these glorious creatures. It allows us to continue to do the right thing. It's as simple as that. We have a free market. Let's use it. Let's support those folks that are raising bees the correct way. Let's support the stewards of the bee. She is in a crisis. Let's protect her. Thank you for letting me bend your ear for 45 minutes. This is a heavy topic, but it's one that is important, both economically, philosophically, morally. So I thank you, and I thank you for your continued support for my family and our company and for our mission to support our honeybees, to continue to grow our honeybee population, both our domestic population and the feral population. As many of you know, that's one of our passions. And we'll get into that at a later date. But for now, I want to thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us. From all of us here, from Julius, from Mr. Sadler, from the folks in the lab, folks in shipping, thank you. Remember, you can pick up our Bee Rescued Propolis Care and Bee Energized raw bee pollen products at Hy-Vee stores across the country, Sprouts Farmers Markets, Whole Foods Markets, mom and pop stores all over the place. Over 500 stores around the country you can pick us up. If you're an internet shopper, find us at berescuedonline.com, or you can find our products at azurestandard.com, iherb.com. If you want to place an international order, you can purchase there as well. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and please be well.